Duro Jaye Ogunsanya, when he come and say Tinubu na him classmates. See, this is where they tell us where even person we blend go who know say all this one a lie. Looking at this man, then looking at Tinubu, you can see a very big age difference. I know the person fit go school for old age, but as this old thing be, let's assume, say the school where they go, all of them are age mates. Or probably the man get fine body. David Udai come come as he come talk say they don't search this man name for Google for all kinds of platform wey be say e dey search name come out. They say that name e no exist. Una know this David Udai wey be say e dey find everything wey concern Tinubu. The guy ate Tinubu like we show. Salo Boamela wo. No be small thing though. All because say you want lawyer. What a shame. Full grown man. You come out, go television station. Say na you and Tinubu na gotta go school. Which of the school oga? Na primary, na secondary. I been at the Chicago University itself. Hey, my people. Now wow, hey, see, this man we call himself not take Bedro Jaye Ogunsanya. Yeah, what was zoo? Everyone why? Since no would they as just big risk so you don't come out for national television. When they talk, say you know override yourself. How much they want pay you, how much they want give you. There are people that are just loyal to this Tinubu. Like, I'm not against Tinubu, and I keep saying it, I'm not against him. But the fact remains that people did not vote for him. It's simple and short. See, in your own place where they know you, if you no winner, that means no win another place. It's just crystal clear. Yeah, I hail you now. Oh yeah, I'm gonna carry go all the evidence. I don't pack up for this video. Now do well, now bye-bye. Now like and share.
Because as is now abundantly clear, the judiciary, as it's generously referred to, signaled to the world and to Nigeria specifically that even the letter of the law, the Nigerian Constitution itself, is essentially a series of suggestions that basically, in the interests of protecting the status quo, the judiciary will essentially make up rules that don't exist on the fly. They will nitpick technicalities which make very little sense to anyone, both within and outside the system. And they will basically work their way back from a predetermined answer to basically to arrive at a series of contrived questions. And the only purpose of doing all of this is to subvert justice. So what is abundantly clear now is that even going forward, even after this inevitably goes to the Supreme Court, the outcome isn't going to be any different, because the Nigerian judiciary has made a mockery of itself. To give you an idea of just how much of a mockery that we're talking about now. Some of the judgments, the rulings that were pronounced on the day were that, for example, on the issue of the supposed president's drug dealing forfeiture in the United States, where, as you mentioned earlier, he forfeited the sum of $460,000 to the U.S. government, being proceeds of heroin trafficking. The ruling completely sidestepped this issue, made no attempt to engage with that whatsoever, and instead referred to a letter which was supposedly written from the U.S. Embassy to the Nigerian Inspector General of Police in 2003, supposedly clearing somebody known as Bola Ahmad Tinubu of any sort of criminal records in the U.S. Meanwhile, the person who is sitting as the president, his name is Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So, and if you know anything about law, you would know that such a thing isn't a simple typo, right? It's a whole different person that was requested. The details of a whole different person were requested, and obviously they got back the answer they were looking for, which is obviously, there is no such thing, because no such person exists. And that's what the supposed judiciary relied on 20 years later in 2023 to basically pronounce him innocent. The judgment said, based on that letter, he had no case, and that the forfeiture is a civil matter. It's not a criminal matter, so it's fine. That's what the supposed Chief Justice of the Nigerian Appeal Courts, ruled. So what has become abundantly clear is that as it stands, Nigeria has no law. Nigeria has a series of written and codified suggestions, but anything and everything, depending on how much money you have, depending on how much influence you have, anything and everything will be allowed to stand up in court, no matter how stupid, no matter how fatuous the argument is. Everything can fly. Nigeria essentially is no longer a country under law. Nigeria was never a particularly lawful society to begin with, but this, I think, has driven the final nail into the coffin. As I said, shortly after the ruling was put out, as it stands now, if I stand in the middle of the road in front of a TV broadcast camera and I'm holding a gun and I shoot people dead, and this is broadcast to millions of people in 4K UHD quality, I will be fine because I can go to court now. One of the rulings that was given, for example, was that the vice presidential candidate who was actually not eligible to run because he had been registered as a contestant for another political office concurrently, which is illegal. The ruling given was that, as long he didn't do it intentionally, so it's fine. So essentially, now what that means is the maxim which any lawyer anywhere in the world is raised with, which is that ignorance is no excuse under the law, has for the first time been turned on its head in Nigeria by the appeal court. So essentially, as I said, if I shoot a bunch of people dead in the streets in front of a TV camera, my argument in court can be I didn't do it intentionally, so I'm free to go.
People live in the FCT, and just like everything, you need to know the terrain, you need to know the problems, you need to know to be able to solve them. But the minister is new to the FCT, and maybe he wasn't guided right. But we need to look at that again.
That means there is a vacuum.
How?
There is a lacuna. One expects that these gaps should be closed by through close collaboration.
I cannot force myself on the minister. You have to remember that the Senate is on recess. I'm a lawmaker. I haven't been around. The Senate is on recess, so they're not approving anything. You cannot get approval from a house that's not sitting. And also, you also have to remember that the minister of the FCT now, and I don't think we've ever really had a governor. We have had one as a senator, as a minister of the FCT. So some governors may think that FCT as minister, since between the minister administers FCT, the senator is the highest elected office in the FCT. The FCT, the minister of FCT does not have executive powers. He works hand in hand with the National Assembly and the president to administer FCT. So I've never met the minister. So if there's a lacuna, it isn't completely my fault. The Senate is on recess. And remember, the minister has been there 2-3 weeks. The Senate has been inaugurated, 2 months? And most of the 2 months, we've been in court. I feel that just as you expect your leaders to be kind to you, you also have to be kind to your leaders. Let me give you a scenario of what the last year and a half has been for most of the people in the National Assembly. In fact, now, when you look at our platforms, is when most of the senators are being affirmed. Most of the time you come, somebody's off somewhere, he has tribunal in somewhere or the other, he has to raise money for lawyers, all sorts of things. So the last 8 weeks that we have been senators, I will assure you that 90% of the senators have been completely distracted, which is only to be expected. If you're not a senator, you cannot represent the people. So that's the first hurdle you must clear. Number 2, I assure you that most of the senators, especially the new ones, they are definitely not silent. The only difference is that when we have issues to discuss, and I suppose it's properly managed by the Senate President, when the House is going to be rowdy, he calls for an executive session, and you will never know what happened in there. I know some of the things I have seen in those executive sessions, even with the older senators. Sometimes I'm shocked at how rowdy the House gets. We all are extremely vocal, I promise you. If not, there's certain things that would have happened that have not. So you need to give us a few months to see what kind of senators we're going to be. You cannot judge us of 3 months, 9, of which we've been on recess already now, I'd say at least 6 weeks. We were not even there for the 6 weeks. Most of the senators are away. The only reason that I am here, I went away, I came back, is because I wanted to be around for my judgment, even if I wasn't going to be physically in the court. And then I'm going away again because this is the biggest period we have for being away. I'm one of those people that I have gone to the Senate every day it has sat. So you need to, it's unfair. There are 8 Labour Party senators, and I assure you, they're not quiet. Even the 50 minority senators are not quiet senators at all. And even within the APC, I will tell you that at least 20% of them are definitely not quiet senators. So you have to wait to see the things that unfold, to see what, we didn't even have committees. So it's not as if you can talk about any specific issues other than what was brought to the Senate for you to deal with on that day. But now that we have committees, then you will start to see the kind of senators that we're all going to be. Then you can judge us. And as for FCT, believe me, I have a long list of problems that the minister and I and the National Assembly have to solve. I have also reminded the Senate that the Senate is the equivalent of the State Assembly of FCT. We need a lot of bylaws passed. Before we went on recess, I had brought a motion for urgent discussion, but the day it was to be heard was when we started to screen ministers, and it was urgent because it had a time constraint. Security, security, security. And I made all the senators know that it was a very critical and urgent problem. And I have several. My shopping list for FCT is quite long. I know the problems of the FCT. So as the minister has said he will work closely with me, we will solve those problems. You have to give us time. He's been minister, I don't know, all of 2 weeks maybe or 3. And I certainly have not been around. We are on recess. The chairman of FCT committee, most of National Assembly, nobody's there. I don't think he's met anybody. Pardon? The judgment of the courts. Well, obviously, as an obedient, and just even a Nigerian, I can see a lot of lapses in the decision of the courts. And I also, a lot of the tribunals, but as you all know, and that's why I said I counted myself lucky, and there are many things I cannot tell you about, but I know that my judges had a lot of integrity. They were the real judges. But in lots of places, I've also seen where Femi Falana quoted the Electoral Act. If you're not a member of a party, you cannot complain about the primaries of a party, and you have 14 days from the date of the primaries to do so. But some judges are using that to undo elections. Let's see what the Court of Appeal says about things like that. There are many things that are wrong. I also see certain places where somebody is in court, then he goes and takes another job as a minister. I've also seen the Supreme Court, ruling that once you have taken another job, then the senatorial bid has lapsed. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that we have to wait till all these cases are concluded. Then we can then talk about them. But for now, I'm chairperson of the Women Affairs Committee in the Senate.
We have today. My name is Tinubu Ede. I'm one of the counsel for the petitioner in this matter. Today, parties adopted their written addresses, and the matter is now adjourned for judgment. We fought this case through and through. We called about 40 witnesses, and then tendered exhibits running into the thousands. The respondents also did so, and the main plank of our case is that the second respondent was at the time of the election not qualified because he didn't resign from his post as Accountant General and Permanent Secretary of River State. We led evidence to that effect. We have addressed extensively on it today, and we await the judgment of the tribunal. Thank you.
Are you hopeful?
The work has been done. We leave the rest to the tribunal.
First of all, I am extremely grateful to the team of lawyers that stood their ground, refused to be intimidated, put very accurate facts forward. We are very satisfied with what has been presented today as our final address, and I'm trusting the tribunal and trusting our Lord God Almighty that justice will be done.
Now, what words will you have for your supporters all across River State?
We know exactly what happened on election day, but that is very different from what we are doing in court. What we are here to do in court is to ensure that we secure the mandate that was taken off us in March. And I just want to assure everybody in River State that we will do everything within our power to see that justice is done. We've presented a case, we're just waiting for the result. The judgment is just a few weeks away, so let's be patient, stand firm. We're fighting this all the way to the end.
Because of those that were in court, can you please enlighten us on what happened in court today?
The matter was for adoption of written addresses. And by written addresses, what is meant is that all the submissions of all the various parties that were put in writing, the legal arguments, will be adopted and elaborated upon, which is what we did today.
Okay, the petitioner raised the issue of resignation letter not being issued before the primary or after the primary. Can you shed more light on it?
Well, you see, there is a provision of the Constitution which says that a candidate must resign before the date of election. All throughout the electoral history, that date of election has always been the date set by INEC. But curiously, in this case, the petitioner is insisting that it is the date of the primaries of his party. However, we think that the law does not envisage such a nebulous date because each of the 23 parties contesting in the election have their different dates of primaries. So you can't have disparate dates as the day of the election. So that explains why we joined issues on them that were signed well before the general elections.
So what are the other issues argued by the respondents?
Yeah, the other issues argued were that certain things were wrong with the processes of the election. That is, some of the forms were not signed, some of the result sheets were mutilated, and that there was overvoting in some places, and there was what they call ballot accounting. That means if ballots 1 to 500 are given to this polling station, when you count the ballots, it must tally. However, those to prove those allegations are people who are in the polling units. And our case was that you didn't call anybody from the polling units to speak to your documents. It's as simple as that. So on that score, we said you called only 69 witnesses out of 6,866 polling units. Definitely you cannot see 69 witnesses out of 6,866 have occasioned the substantial non-compliance with the elections.
The judgment that was just delivered last 6th of September in the presidential tribunal, the Court of Appeal. Actually, it came as a surprise, not only to myself, but to all and sundry, all Nigerians, meaning Nigerians, both at home and the diaspora. For me, I was in court that particular day because I'm one of the lawyers representing our party and our candidate. So like I said, I was disappointed because the court came out and the judges, they gave a judgment, but they did not render justice to the matter. So I can see that judgment as a judgment in error. We know that law is dynamic and is mutable. The law keep on developing, and the court, like in law, we say that whatever is the pronouncement of the court is what is the law. But then everybody looks up to the court as the last hope of the common man. It's a temple of justice. And even the judges who are the members of the bench, and even the lawyers who are equally members of the bar, we're all members of, we are all, in the temple of justice, we are ministers. But especially those of the judges, they are seen as they should be above board because they are looked upon, as arbiters. And when they come out to give judgment, they should equally look at the facts of the matter, look at the evidence adduced, and then arrive at their judgment. And that's why most times when you see a judgment of a court, there are rules, there are things you need to identify, what we call the obiter. The obiter dictum is what actually informed the court to arrive at their decision, or the stare decisis. But these things we are lacking in that judgment because looking at what I saw in the court that day, everybody says it. You saw there's issues that need to be addressed. When you talk about evidence, the court was even appearing as if they were aligning with the respondent, whether they were taking side. The way they reacted whenever there's an issue that concerns the respondent, they were there as if they were praising the respondents. But when it concerns the petitioners, which my party is one of them, PDP, they reacted vehemently, with anger, as if there was even one of the judges were saying, do we expect them, the court, to manufacture evidence? But I saw during the proceedings, there was overwhelming evidence that were tendered by my party and even the Labour Party, even concerning qualification. The respondent was not even qualified ab initio from what the evidence tendered by my own party, showing that the forgery, the certificate forgery that was there, even the matter is still pending in a court in America, showing that there was forfeiture, drug forfeiture, money laundering, that involved drug. And then I saw the court. The court supposed to be a court, like I say, a temple of justice. So they would have, even if they don't want to, rule on it, but they should have stood up to condemn that fact that somebody that is going to be a president of Nigeria would have had a case in court in America concerning or involving drug proceeds, and he was indicted and he forfeited that money. They were saying, like some of them were saying, it was not a criminal matter, whether civil or criminal. But at the end of the day, there was forfeiture. And in law, that's what we call plea bargain. When you forfeit something, you're trying to secure your freedom, and you had to forfeit something. The court would have risen up to condemn that particular act, even if at the end of the day. They're talking about transmission. I saw when the court was even saying that INEC has the right to transmit or collect results in any manner they want, which is not in order, because the Electoral Act was amended in 2022, and the innovation of that amendment of that act was that inclusion of electronic system of voting and transmission of results. And that was why the federal government spent billions of naira, even procuring, the INEC was giving so much money to procure the beavers machine. What would have been the essence of the need of bringing beavers? Because the beaver was to capture the voter, accredit the voter, and then capture that voter and the vote after the result has been collected. You capture the result and transmit it to the area of INEC. Then at the end of the day, INEC said that there was a glitch, they did not transmit. And that burden of proof should have been rested upon them to prove beyond reasonable doubt why that glitch. So we expected the court, and even Nigerians expected that court to rise up and say, no, we must strengthen our democracy. And that democracy, why should we? Because the importance in the past, there was that anomaly when we collect results manually. There were people who can manipulate the results, because if you collect it from the polling unit, before you get to either local government collection center or maybe finally to the total collection center, you will see that people can impugn some figures in there, just like what happened. We tendered documents, and even Labour Party tendered documents from INEC, that most of the result sheets were blurred, no figures were seen. Even the ones that were seen, they saw them Tipexing them, there were Tipex on them, like in River State. These were things that happened and occurred, that took place in that election. We expected the court to condemn it, so that our younger generations who are coming up tomorrow, the future generation, can have confidence in both in INEC, both in the judicial system. Because if you don't do anything, you say the INEC has a right to transmit. You are finished. The Nigeria is finished. Then talk about that. You talk about the fact that, okay, INEC made promises. They said they were going to transmit. They said they were going to, and they failed in those their promises. Those are things we expected that they will rule on it. Then coming to that 25% of the FCT is a constitutional matter. And court supposed to be a court of legal direction, in order to, develop and more of our law. You are talking about the constitution. There's provision in section 134, which provided for FCT. But it said that for you to be, announced as a winner of a presidential election, that you must secure 25% in at least 2/3 of all the 36 states in the federation, and that conjunctive word and the FCT. That makes it mandatory. But the judges, the court now ruled and was even taking FCT to be like one of the states of the federation, making it 37 states, which, as far as I'm concerned, was in error, because there's rules of interpretation in law. We have the rules we call the literary rule. That's, you have to interpret literally whatever word you see in that constitution. We have what we call the golden rule. The court has to use golden rule. But the final one is the mischievous rule, the mischief rule. You use the mischief rule to know what is the intent or the intention of the drafters of the constitution. Because the members of the National Assembly, the legislative arm, when they make laws, we were not there. You didn't know what they want to cure. There must be a defect they want to cure. But when you want to read the constitution, the law says you read it, what we call community reading. Go to section 1 of the constitution. It provided that Nigeria should be a federation consisting of states and the FCT, the Federal Capital Territory. This is in section 1. That Nigeria should be a federation consisting of states and the FCT. So when you are not talking about making FCT a part of state, it did not. And it went further. Even if you go further, there's a place he provided in the constitution that provided about the 36 states, even defined them and made them, there's a schedule for 36 states. And he came to local government, he brought 774 local government and defined them. So there's no place he defined FCT as a state. So when you are reading, you do what we call community reading. Not only that section 134, you now said FCT is now regarded as a state. Because there's no governor in FCT. There's no senator in it's only one senator. There are not three senators in FCT. So all these things, we have looked at them. As far as I'm concerned, the court of first instance has pronounced, given a judgment. But one good thing and one beautiful thing is that we still have a window, that there's still a door open for appeal, which is to appeal to Supreme Court, which is the highest court of the land. And why it is important that Supreme Court, apart from adjudicating in matters and ruling on cases, they are a court of legal direction. They direct. And when they direct that this is the law, it becomes the law. So that's why we are saying that the justices, eminent jurists, they did well. They did their best, because human beings, we are all human beings. Anybody is prone to mistake and whatever. But I know why we are talking about this. Democracy is, defines the will of the people. That's why he said it's a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So when you are talking about democracy, you look at the mindset, the mood of this nation, the mood of the people. Nigerians say that election that occurred or took place in 25th February 2023 was undermined, was rigged, was manipulated. That it is clear. Even the foreign observers, what do you call it, European Union came out with their report, and they were so vehement in condemning that election was not done properly well. And the people came and was reacting, condemning European Union. But this same European Union, people who support Nigeria, both in our election, they provide funds, even in other NDS, in the activities. They still have to assist Nigeria, and they provide funds. And these are people you brought as foreign observers with our local observers. They came up with a report, a well-detailed report, telling us that election was undermined, was manipulated. And you are trying to jettison this. It's not good. You need to look at something that is going to bring for a future generation, leave a legacy for our younger generation. That's what I'll tell you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, now, looking at the PDP, of course, the PDP has acquired the certified true copy of the judgment.
Okay.
The next thing now is the appeal.
Okay.
What's going forward? What is the next step? What is the next thing? What do you have to tell Nigerians going forward?
Thank you so much. Like we said, it is a court process and procedure. The procedure is that after a court of first instance give judgment, you have a limited time, a time limit for you to apply to Supreme Court or a higher court, an appellate court, and you have to transmit all your processes and notice of appeal. So my party PDP have actually taken action. We are moving to Supreme. Even the presidential candidate have directed our legal team, and even the party have equally directed our legal team. All those processes are being taken care of. We are moving to the Supreme Court. We are transmitting all our documents and every document we need to rely upon, and equally the certified true copy of the judgment is part of it. And I know Labour is equally doing the same. But one thing I want to commend Nigerians and then the youth, importantly, is that Nigerians have seen it. They are more civilized. Nigerians are a civilized society and enlightened, because people used to condemn the youth and Nigeria. They are interested in their matter, because the late leader of Eastern States those days, Odumegwu Ojukwu, will tell you that because he's involved. The youth are involved because they know that what is at stake concerns them. Nigeria concerns them. Everything about Nigeria, nobody is greater Nigerian than another person. We're all Nigerian. But one thing I commend them is that for the way they have taken this matter, starting from after the election to the time the matter went to the tribunal and now going to Supreme, they've always reacted and responsibly, and looking at it that they don't want violence. Nobody wants violence. Nobody wants chaos or anarchy. But we want the due process of the law to be followed. We want the rule of law to take place. We want at the end of the day to achieve justice for Nigeria. That's why even everybody is saying, commending that people should go to the highest court of the land, Supreme Court, and let the court interpret our laws and interpret this judgment and come up with justice that can bring peace and equity and justice in Nigeria. That's what we are saying.
This is Bod TV Bod. In case the first time you come here, please don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more uploads.